Namo Namaha Bhavtam Sarvesham Hartam Swagatam. Welcome back to the channel Sanskrit Sopanam. I hope you are doing great. I'm also good. And moving ahead in our Learning Sanskrit through Gita series, today we'll be taking two shlokas together. That is the 62nd and the 63rd shloka from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Now the reason I'm taking these two shlokas together is because even though this information is divided into two shlokas, but it is one piece of information. So when we take these two shlokas together, then only we get the full meaning out of it. And again, before starting this video, I just want to inform that these two shlokas are probably one of the most powerful shlokas in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, and there is also a famous title given to these two shlokas. That is the ladder of fall for humanity. Okay, it may sound a bit depressing and pessimistic, but no, it's just Krishna explaining in very clear terms that how a human psyche works, how human mind works, and why and for what reasons a human being, he can either bring his life and take it in an upward movement, or he can bring his life and take it into a ruin. So the entire authority of how a human life is going to shape resides in the human itself. And how the human psyche works when we are interacting with the world, that is very clearly laid out in these two shlokas. Again, the most powerful shlokas that is present in Bhagavad Gita. So much we can understand about our own human psyche, about our own mind. So enough of the build-up. What is the shloka? What is Krishna trying to tell us? And what we can learn from Sanskrit point of view? All this we will see. So without wasting any more time, let's quickly dive in today's video. Okay, so here are the shlokas that we'll be covering today. Let me go through the shloka once. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu upajayate sangat samjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate krodhat bhavati sammohaha sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti bhramshat buddhinashaha buddhinashat pranashyati. Okay, so these are the shlokas. Just one thing I want to point out here. When I read this line, smriti bhramshat buddhinashaha. So see, because I've discussed this point before also, that when we are doing a reading of these shlokas, or when we are doing chanting, if we are taking a break at the end of a quarter, at the end of a pada, that at that point we have to do the vichcheda. So smriti bhramshat buddhi nashaha. This is how the actual pada is. So if I am taking a pause there, I have to do the vichcheda there. Smriti bhramshat buddhi nashaha buddhi nashat pranashyati. And then if I am not taking a break and I am reading the entire line in one go, then the sandhi can remain intact. Smriti bhramshat buddhi nasho buddhi nashat pranashyati. Okay, so this one thing I have already discussed before also, just I thought of repeating it again. Okay, but anyways, these are the shlokas, and one by one we'll take each of the shloka and we'll just quickly see what all sandhis we can spot in these shlokas. So we can spot the first sandhi here between these two padas, dhyayatah and vishayan. What is this sandhi? So again, this is first the visarga is changing into u, that is utva sandhi, and then it is followed by a guna sandhi. So as I said, first the visarga is changing into u, and that is part of Uttva Sandhi. Okay, Visarga changing into U, so that is Uttva Sandhi. Why? Because there is a presence of a soft consonant, a presence of a soft letter. So that is Uttva Sandhi, and as soon as Visarga changes into U, it recombines with the preceding A, and again another Sandhi happens, that is the Guna Sandhi, due to which both of these A and U are replaced by O. So finally you have Dhyayat and O, the pada becomes Dhyayato. Okay, so it is like a two-parter sandhi. First, Visarga sandhi, Visarga changing into U, and as soon as Visarga changes into U, it recombines with the preceding A, and they both change into O due to Guna sandhi. So it is Utva plus Guna sandhi. Dhyayataha Vishayan changing into Dhyayato Vishayan. Okay, if you move ahead, we can spot another sandhi here. Sangaha and Teshu. Here, the Visarga is following a hard consonant, and so Visarga changes into Sa. What sandhi is this? So this is Sattva sandhi. Changing into U, Uttva Sandhi, changing into Sa, Sattva Sandhi. Okay, so Sangaha Teshu becomes Sangasteshu. And then there is another Sandhi between Teshu and Upajayate. So this is the simple Savarna Dirgha Sandhi. Teshu Upajayate changing into Teshu Upajayate. Okay, both the swaras, U swaras are replaced by the Dirgha form of that swara. So in all, Sangaha Teshu Upajayate, they are combining as Sangasteshu Upajayate. Sattva Sandhi here, and Savarna Dirgha Sandhi here. Okay? And then lastly, we can spot another Sandhi here. Krodha and Abhijayate. What is happening? So again, this Aha is followed by a soft letter. Okay? In this case, this Aha is followed by particularly Raswa A. So what happens? Utva happens. Again, the same thing that happens here. Visarga changes into U. So here also Visarga changes into U. So this is the first change. Visarga changing into U, that is Utva Sandhi. Now again you know that as soon as Visarga changes into U, it recombines with the preceding A and they both change into U. And what is that? This is Guna Sandhi. Okay, so this is the same combination Utva plus Guna that we saw here. Dhyayataha Vishayan, Dhyayato Vishayan. Same combination is happening here. And as a result of this combination, we now have the word Krodho and Abhijayate. And then again, there is another Sandhi that is going to happen here. What Sandhi is this? So this is the Purva Rupa Sandhi. Okay, what does Purva Rupa basically means? Whenever a pada is ending either with a or with a O, and if it is followed by a Raswa A, so the pada is ending in a O, it is followed by a Raswa A, so only the Purva Rupa will remain. Only this Purva Rupa, this O will remain. So what about this A? This A will be made hidden by the Avagraha Chinna. So Krodho Abhijayate becomes, as we see here, Krodho Abhijayate. Only the Purva Rupa remains, that is to say, only this O Swara will remain, the A will be made hidden by this Avagraha Chinna. That is this Purva Rupa Sandhi. So basically in all, Krodha and Abhijayate, 3 steps Sandhi is happening. First, Visarga changing into U, that is Utva Sandhi, then A plus U becoming O, that is Guna Sandhi, and finally, Krodho and Abhijayate combining as Purva Rupa Sandhi, Krodho Abhijayate. Okay, so that is all. Okay, and now let us see the 63rd shloka also. And the very first sandhi we can spot between these two padas, Krodhat Bhavati. And what is happening here? So it is simply the Jashtu sandhi, the very popular common Jashtu sandhi. This takara is changing into the third consonant of its varga. So ta, tha, da. So the Krodhat, this is changing into Krodhad. Okay, why this change happens? Because a consonant is followed by a soft consonant. And a soft consonant will try to make the earlier consonant also soft. So Krodhat changes into Krodhad, Krodhad Bhavati, Jastva Sandhi. Okay, and that same Sandhi you can spot between these two padas also, Smriti Bhramshat and Buddhi Nashaha. Again, this Takara is followed by a soft consonant, so this Takara will also changing into the soft consonant. So it changes into C3. So Ta changes into this Da. So Smriti Bhramshat becomes Smriti Bhramshad. Okay, Smriti Bhramshat, Buddhi Nashaha. And then we spot a sandhi here, Buddhi Nashaha and Buddhi Nashat. What sandhi is this? So again, it is Visarga changing into U, so that is Utva sandhi. And then it is combining with the preceding A and becoming O due to Guna sandhi. So it is basically Utva sandhi followed by Guna sandhi. Buddhi Nashaha becoming Buddhi Nasho, as we saw in the previous shloka. And as always, these Sandhi rules and the entire word-by-word breakdown of these shlokas is in the PDF sheet that you can download from the link in the description box for your own Swadhyaya. Now let us move on and start the decoding of the shloka. Okay, so we are taking the 62nd shloka first. And in this shloka, you can spot 3 Kriya Pada. You have Upajayate, you have Samjayate, and you have Abhijayate. Okay, very clearly you can see the main dhatu, the main Kriya Pada is this Jayate. Okay, it is just with different upasargas, but the overall meaning they are given is essentially same. So anyways, let us start with this first Kriya Pada, Upajayate. Upajayate means something arises. Okay, something arises in that sense. And this Kriya Pada is coming from the dhatu Jan dhatu. Jan dhatu again means to be born, to come into existence or to arise. Based on the context, slight variations, but the meaning is to be born or to arise. That is this Jan dhatu. The form here is simple, Vartaman Kala, that is Lat Lakara, Pratham Purusha, that some third person, some third thing, and Ekvachanam. Okay, see, all these 3 Kriya Padas, they have the same dhatu and the same form. So Jan in these properties becomes Jayate. Okay, and as I mentioned, the only difference between these 3 Kriya Padas is the difference in the upasargas. But the overall meaning and the implied meaning they are trying to give is the same only. That something is born, something arises. Okay, in that sense only. So we are starting with this Upajayate, something arises. Immediate question will be Kaha Upajayate. And the first word we get is Sangaha Upajayate. Sangaha. This is a Pullinga Shabda, Sanga. And the meaning is attachment. The meaning is asakti. Asakti towards something, attachment towards something. That is this Sanga. Okay, so this Pullinga Pratipadika, here it is in the form Prathama Vibhaktihi Ekavachanam. Sangaha Upajayate. Attachment arises. Okay, so moving on, we have the question Keshu Sangaha Upajayate. Keshu. On what? On what objects this attachment arises? And the response is Teshu Sangaha Upajayate. Teshu means on them. Okay, and on them, it is pointing to something. We'll come to that. On them, basically, it is pointing to on the sense objects. Okay, we will decode this word further. But teshuhu sangaha upajayate. On them, that is, on the sense objects, the attachment, the asakti arises. That is the intent. This teshu, this is again, of course, coming from tad, sarvanama shabda, and the form here is, again, saptami vibhaktihi bahuvachanam. Teshu, on them. Okay, and then if you have to know what is the gender of this tad, okay, this tad is a sarvanama, it's a pronoun after all. So it can be in either of the three genders. So in what gender this tad is here? So this tad is pointing to the in Vishaya, that is the sense objects. Since Vishaya is a Pullinga Shabda, so this tad here is also to be considered Pullinga, because we are basically saying on the sense objects, on them. So the pronoun is pointing towards a Pullinga Shabda, so this tad is also Pullinga, Saptami Vibhakti Bahuvachanam, tad changing into Teshu. Teshu Sangaha Upajayate. On them, the attachment arises. But then the information is not complete. Now I am asking the question, Kasya? That is, whose attachment arises? That for whom this attachment arises? And now we get the main bit. Dhyayataha pumsaha teshu sangaha upajayate. See, pumsaha. Pumsaha is coming from the pratipadika pums. It is a sakaranta pullinga shabda, and pumsa, literally it means purusha. Okay, but here we can understand this is implying a person in general. Okay, not just only Purusha, only man, a person in general. Okay, so the Pratipadika is this Sakarant Pullinga Shabda Pumsa, and this Pumsaha is the Shashti Vibhakti Ekvachanam form. Okay, this is the Shashti Vibhakti Ekvachanam form, because we are trying to say for such a person, that for such a person attachment arises. So Pumsaha Teshu Sangaha Upajayate, that for such a person attachment on the sense objects arises. Okay, but Krishna has given a very apt description of such a person. And that is this dhyayataha. Okay, it is kind of an adjective we are using. The pratipadika here is dhyayat. And what is the meaning of dhyayat? Dhyayat means while thinking. Or if it is being used as an adjective, so dhyayat means one who is thinking. One who is thinking, one who is contemplating on something, one who is meditating on something, in that sense. Okay, so since this pratipadika is being used as an adjective for such a person, so the meaning is for a person constantly thinking about something. So for a person constantly thinking about something, the attachment arises on them, in that sense. See, this adjective, dhyayat, this is a kridanta. That means this world is created from a dhatu. What is the dhatu? Dhyay dhatu. Dhyay dhatu means to think about something, to contemplate on something. That is that dhyay dhatu. And this dhatu is being modified using Shatra Pratyaya. And we already know what this Shatra Pratyaya does. It creates a world with this meaning, that while thinking, a person who is thinking, a person who is contemplating, in that sense, the action is being done. So Dhyaya plus Shatra, you get this Pratipadika Dhyayat, and this adjective, this verb-based adjective, this is being used as an adjective for Pumsaha here. So it is following the same suit. It is also following Pullinga, Shashti Vibhaktihi Ekvachanam. So Dhyayat changing into Dhyayataha. Dhyayataha Pumsaha. Okay, so I hope all these words are clear. But still, the information is slightly incomplete. So let us open that last word also. That we are saying for a person constantly thinking. Dhyayataha Pumsa. For a person constantly thinking. But constantly thinking about what? Okay, what is the object of this thinking? So that is why I'm asking this question. Kan dhyayataha Pumsa. And the response is Vishayan dhyayataha Pumsaha. Now here we bring out the noun towards which this pronoun was pointing towards. This is the main object, Vishayan, coming from the Pratipadika Vishaya. It is a Akaranta Pullinga Pratipadika Vishaya, and this means sense objects. Okay, all the infinite objects for our senses to experience, interact and consume. So all those sense objects. Okay, Indriya Vishaya, basically. Person constantly thinking about what? Thinking about the sense objects. So since it is an object here, for this dhyayata, this kriya that is happening, so here it is in Dvitiya Vibhaktihi and Bahuvachanam. So Vishaya changing into Vishayan. The entire sentence becomes Vishayan dhyayataha pumsaha. For a person constantly thinking about the sense objects, teshuhu sangaha upajayate. Soon enough, an asakti, an attachment arises on them. Okay, that for a person who is constantly thinking about something, soon enough, he develops an attachment towards that thing, an asakti towards that thing. Okay, so I hope all these padas, this is clear. And as I mentioned, these two shlokas are famously titled as the ladder of fall. So think of this as the first rung of the ladder. Okay, this is the first step. This is where the problem starts to happen. What is the problem? That when a person constantly thinks about something, soon enough he develops an asakti, an attachment towards that thing. That is what Krishna is explaining here. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Now everything that will follow this. Okay, we will see how. So moving forward, we have another Kriya Pada samjayate. And again, as I said, the implied meaning is same. That something is born, something arises in that sense only. Okay, the same jan dhatu, latlakara, prathama purusha, ekvachanam, all that is same. Okay, so if we move on, the question is, kaha samjayate? Now what arises? And the response is, kamaha samjayate. The desire, the ichha, the vancha, that desire arises. Okay. Kama, this again is a akaranta pullinga shabda, and here it is in prathama vibhakti ekvachanam form. Kamaha samjayate. The desire arises. But then the question is, kasmat karanat? Due to what reason this desire arises? And you have to remember the first step that we spoke about. That sangat kamaha samjayate, from attachment. Sangha, we already saw this word earlier, and sangat. So this is the Panchami Vibhakti Ekvachanam form. Why Panchami Vibhakti? Because we want to say due to this attachment or from this attachment. From attachment, desire is born. From attachment comes desire. Okay. That a moment you develop asakti or attachment towards some sense objects, soon enough, the desire, the kama will born. The kama will arise for that sense object. Okay, sangat kamaha samjayate. From attachment comes desire. Think of this as the second step now. Now we'll go to that third step, that what follows now. So again another Kriya Pada abhijayate, in the same sense, something again is born, something again arises. Okay. Again asking the question, kaha abhijayate? Now what is born? And Krishna is saying, krodha abhijayate. Now the anger is born. Now anger arises. And we know that kasmat karanat krodha abhijayate. Kamat krodha abhijayate. Now you can see the pattern, what is happening. That initially something happened, then as a chain reaction of that thing, something else happens, then as a chain reaction, something else happens. This is how, that is why it is ladder of fall. Okay, step by step it keeps on happening like a chain reaction. Okay, so we are in that third step and Krishna is saying, from that desire that arose earlier, from that desire, now anger arises. Now anger is born. Okay, kamat krodha abhijayate. From desire comes anger. Okay, so I hope all these padas, they are clear. And so far what we have that if a person constantly thinks about a certain sense object, soon enough he develops an attachment towards that thing. From that attachment, soon enough a desire will be born. And as soon as desire comes up, so anger will also follow it. Okay, how so anger follows desire? All this we will shortly discuss at the end of the video. But right now we are just understanding what the verse is trying to say from Sanskrit point of view. Okay, so from attachment comes desire, from desire comes anger. Okay, so now we are in the 63rd shloka, and here again we find this Kriya Pada bhavati. Okay, see, bhavati means something happens. Okay, something happens, something becomes. Again, in the sense of something is born, something arises, in that same sense only. Just he is using another Kriya Pada bhavati. And this Kriya Pada, as you all know, is coming from bhudhatu. Bhudhatu means to be, to become, in that sense. And the form is very simple. The latlakarha, prathama purushaha, ekvachanam. Okay, bhavati, something happens, something becomes. In the same sense of something arises. Kaha bhavati? And now, sammohaha bhavati. Sammoha. This is again a akaranta pullinga shabda sammoha. The meaning is delusion. Okay, delusion, brahma, agyanata, ignorance, in that sense. Sammoha bhavati. Delusion happens. And based on how the shloka is moving forward, we already know that kasmat, from what the delusion happens, the earlier born thing, krodha. From anger, krodhat sammoha bhavati. That from anger, now delusion happens. Krodhat sammoha bhavati. Okay. And then moving forward in this chain reaction, tadanantaram kaha. See, bhavati, this Kriya Pada is used only once. But then again, for all these pairs, that from this arises this, from this arises this. For all these pair, we can use this same Kriya Pada is implied. Okay, he's not repeating the Kriya Pada as he did in the 62nd shloka. He has just used bhavati once. But then we know that bhavati is like a common Kriya Pada for other words also. Okay, so krodhat sammoha bhavati. From anger, delusion happens. And then I'm asking tadanantaram kaha. Then what? Then what happens? And Krishna is saying smriti vibhramaha bhavati. So this is clearly a samasa, compound word. Smriti means memory, and vibhrama again in the sense of confusion. Vibhrama in the sense of brahma, confusion, or you can say the loss of memory in that sense. Okay, so how we can understand this samasa, smriti vibhrama? Vibhrama of smriti, confusion of memory. Okay, smritehe vibhrama iti smriti vibhramaha. Okay, so this is basically Shashti Tatpurusha Samasa, right? That the confusion of memory, that is the implied meaning of this Samasa. Smriti vibhramaha bhavati. Confusion of memory or loss of memory happens. And kasmat karanat smriti vibhramaha bhavati. Again, from some mohat, from that delusion that happened, from that delusion, the loss of memory or the confusion of memory happens. Okay, so I hope all these padas, again, it is clear. And then let us move to that last part. So again, I'm asking tadanantaram kaha. Okay, that we have already seen the flow. That from attachment comes desire, from desire comes anger, from anger comes delusion, from delusion comes loss of memory. And now I'm asking tadanantaram kaha. Now what arises? Now what happens? And Krishna is saying, now buddhi nashaha bhavati. Nasha, destruction of buddhi. And buddhi in the sense of our viveka, our discriminating intelligence. So our viveka, our discriminating intelligence, that is that buddhi. And buddhi nashaha bhavati. So the destruction of that discriminating faculty happens. The destruction of viveka happens. The destruction of discrimination starts to happen. Okay, buddhi nashaha bhavati. And then we already know that kasmat buddhi nashaha bhavati. So smriti bhramshat. From that loss of memory, the destruction of viveka, destruction of discrimination happens. Smriti bhramshat buddhi nashaha bhavati. And then lastly, Krishna says pranashyati. Pranashyati means perishes. Okay, the Kriya Pada is coming from Nash Dhatuhu. Nash Dhatu means to perish. Okay, and the form is simple. Lat Lakara Prathama Purusha Ekvachanam. Along, this Dhatu is along with this Upsarga pra. So, pranashyati, that is the form we get. Okay, the meaning stays the same, that something or someone perishes. Pranashyati. Okay, and moving on, kaha pranashyati. So even though this is not mentioned in the shloka, but we know Krishna is talking about that same person with whom he started the shloka. That when a person who is constantly thinking about a sense object, so he's talking about an arbitrary person to explain a point. So he's saying that same person, sahapuman, that person pranashyati, that person perishes. That is what he's saying. So even though this sahapuman, this is not directly mentioned here, but we know that it is implied. That Krishna is talking about that same arbitrary person, that person perishes. Okay, so just to tie up the meaning, I'm using what is implied already there. And lastly, kasmat, from what the person pranashyati, that person perishes. So the last step, buddhi nashat, because lastly we saw the last thing that happened was destruction of viveka. And Krishna is saying that as a final nail in the coffin, that buddhi nashat, from the destruction of viveka, due to the destruction of this discriminating faculty, viveka, sahapuman pranashyati, that person completely perishes away. That person completely falls into the ruin. Okay, and that ladder of fall, that is concluded. Okay, so I hope all these padas are clear. See, the words that are used in this shloka is very simple, and the format is also very simple. That first he laid out the initial condition, that when a person is constantly thinking about a sense object, the attachment arises, and then it is the same pattern. From attachment comes this, from that comes this, from that comes this, like a chain reaction. And then as a conclusion, he says, from the destruction of viveka, the person finally pranashyati, the person finally perishes away. Okay, and see, this pranashyati, this is not that literal perishes away, that he literally dies. This pranashyati basically means that is the end of his spiritual journey. Okay, this pranashyati is like a spiritual death. Okay, that a person falls into the ruin. He is completely gone. He has completely swayed away from the track. So this pranashyati not to be taken as literal dies. It is the death of his spiritual, the end of his spiritual journey, of his spiritual progress. Okay, let us see the Anvaya along with the Anuvada now. So Krishna begins by saying, Vishayan dhyayataha pumsaha, for a person who is dhyayata, who is constantly thinking about what? About Vishayan. So Vishayan dhyayataha pumsaha, for a person constantly thinking about sense objects, Sangaha teshu upujayate, an attachment arises teshu, on them. Okay, for a person constantly thinking about sense objects, an attachment arises on them. Then Sangat samjayate kamaha, From attachment, desire is born. Kamat krodha abhijayate. And from desire comes anger. Krodhat sammoha bhavati. From anger, delusion happens. Sammohat smriti vibhramaha bhavati. And from delusion, loss of memory, confusion of memory starts to happen. Then smriti bhramshat buddhi nashaha. From the loss of memory, deterioration of discriminating intelligence, destruction of viveka happens. And lastly, buddhi nashat sapuman pranashyati. Due to the loss of discrimination, that person perishes, dies in his spiritual progress. Okay, that is the entire meaning of the shloka. Okay, so this is the shloka, and as you can already see, that such a straightforward and without sugarcoating anything, our rishis, they have given us this wisdom. Okay, that they are clearly telling us that how a human psyche works, how a human mind works. They are not sugarcoating the words, they are giving you as it is. Okay, so our rishis, they were extremely bold in giving us these truths, and the reason they were so bold and they never sugarcoated was because of their faith in humanity. Okay, see, we sugarcoat things when we feel that the person is not capable of handling the truth. Okay, but our rishis, they always saw the best in all the people, and that is why they were always so bold in making such tall statements, because they were affirmative in their own wisdom, and then they were also very positive in the potential of each human being, that if the truth is given to them without sugarcoating in as a matter of fact thing, they will be able to understand it, they will be able to grasp it. It was their immense compassion and immense faith in humanity that they were able to make such tall and bold statements. One such statement is what we see here, that Krishna describing to us in very clear terms how the human psyche works. See how it all starts. It starts by thinking. Okay, we are constantly thinking about a certain object. The more we keep on thinking about a certain object, soon enough that thoughts will crystallize in a form of a desire. Okay, so the first step is you keep thinking about something, and attachment and asakti arises towards it. That attachment, that asakti towards that object will make you think about it even more. And the more you keep on thinking about it, from that asakti, soon enough, the desire will be born. The desire to acquire that thing. Okay. And from that desire, what arises? Krodha. Now, from desire, how comes Krodha comes? A lot of us think anger, Krodha, because a lot of us wants to get rid of anger, Krodha, right? But a lot of us think that Krodha or anger is a standalone thing, that we can just go and fight and fight with anger and we can get rid of anger. No, that is not how it can ever work. Krodha, anger is always a subproduct. It is always a byproduct. What it is a byproduct of? Whenever we desire something and whenever there is an obstacle towards between us and our object of desire, that causes anger. Okay, so anger is not some standalone thing. Anger is always a byproduct of something standing between us and our object of desire. So the moment we start to constantly think about something, we develop an attachment, asakti towards that thing. Soon enough, that inflow of thoughts towards that thing crystallizes into a burning desire. And then whenever some obstacle is there between us and that object of desire, anger arises. Okay, so kamat krodha abhijayate. Okay, from desire comes anger. Now, as soon as we become angry, what happens to us? We become deluded. Okay, we become deluded. Why? Because we stop seeing the things as they are. Okay, see, whenever we are calm, whenever we are composed, our friends, our family members, they can crack jokes on us, they can make fun of us, and we will still not get offended. Why? Because we are calm, we are composed, and we are able to see the things as they are. We are not trying to superimpose our own thoughts on that thing. We are seeing the thing as they are. Okay, that is the work of a calm and composed mind. But when we are angry, when anger has consumed us, then we become deluded. Krodhat sammoha bhavati. From anger comes delusion. And when we are deluded, we don't see the things what they are. We superimpose our own feelings, our own thoughts on that thing. And then we start to blame and criticize our circumstances, our situations, the peoples, their words, their speech, their actions, everything. Because we have stopped seeing the things as they are, we are now superimposing our own feelings, our own emotions, our own thoughts on that thing. Okay, that is the work. That is the why? Because we are deluded now. Okay, so krodhat sammohaha bhavati. Now, as soon as we become deluded, very clearly we won't be able to recall everything we have read in our past. So smriti bhramsha, that total loss of memory, total confusion of memory, because now we are deluded, we aren't able to recall everything we read. See, every day we might be reading Hanuman Chalisa, Bhagavad Gita and everything, but the moment anger gets hold of us and we become deluded, then we forget all that thing. We are unable to recall all that thing. Okay, so everything that happened in the past, everything we read, all the commitments we made, all the promises we made to ourselves, everything goes to waste because confusion of memory, loss of memory. We aren't able to recall everything that we did. Okay, that is the result of a anger infused deluded mind. So from anger we become deluded, and once we are deluded, the loss of memory. And when there is loss of memory, of course, our viveka, our discriminating intelligence won't work. Okay, see, again, for you to exercise your viveka, discriminating intelligence, you should be able to see things clearly. But right now, at this stage, you are clearly not seeing things clearly. So, with all that has happened, and with that loss of memory, you aren't able to recall what you read, what you studied, what your gurus taught you, what your teachers taught you. And then, when you are not able to recall that, your discriminating intelligence, your viveka is not going to work. And that is that buddhi nasha, destruction of viveka, destruction of discrimination. You aren't able to discriminate between right and wrong, good and bad, evil and not evil. Okay, and the viveka is the one thing that I can either make a character or it can break a character. So if you are not able to exercise your viveka, then you are nothing more than an animal. Okay, so because then all your animal instincts gets hold of you. And that is why Krishna says, buddhi nashat pranashyati. That once this destruction of viveka happens, then that person is as good as gone. Because everything that makes a person human, that makes a person capable of reaching that godhood, every faculty that is there, it is totally lost. And the person, he completely is completely dominated by his animal instinct, by his animal nature. So he's that is why he uses this strong term pranashyati, that he perishes away, that he perishes in his spiritual journey, he perishes in his spiritual progress, and he becomes nothing more than a two-legged animal. Okay, so that is the entire ladder of fall of humanity. What we can learn from is this. See, we may have done the same mistake so many times. But again, our rishis, as I said, they had immense faith in humanity, and they never made you feel guilty about what you did. They were always focused on, okay, even if you have made the same mistake 100 times, now understand it, and now start to properly introspect and check those mistakes. Okay, problem is not that you have committed a mistake 100 times. The problem is that still you are not trying to correct it. And from this ladder of fall, these two shlokas, we can clearly see the steps that are involved. And now we can clearly see, whenever we are angry, whenever we are agitated, we can clearly see what is happening within us. And then we can stop it then and there. Because this is how the human psyche, human mind is working. So from this shloka, we get such a powerful insight that if we truly start to work on it, we can again, even if we have fallen, we can again rise back to that, to that godhead that is within each of us. Okay, so brilliant shloka again. Again, if you read commentaries on it, it will be more joyous, because in commentaries you will get so much more that I am not capable of giving or putting out in words. Okay, so yes, that is a shloka. Sanskrit point of view, very simple shloka, easy to understand, plain easy grammatical structure. If I missed out anything, you have PDF sheet to aid you. I'll now take leave. I'll meet you in another video with another shlokas. Until then, stay awesome, stay happy, keep learning Sanskrit. Vayam punah milamaha. Dhanyavad.